All right, so in today's breakdown, we're going to be looking into another client project. So this will be this month's client project breakdown. This is a pretty big one for me. It's for a conference, and the screen was pretty massive. And so you'll see, as you can see right here, it's different than just the regular 1920 by 1080. I believe it was 1260 by 1400. So it was basically people, to give you a size scale of the stage, people were about that big compared to the screen. It was huge. So they sent me the song, and they asked me to animate something, some imagery that relates to saints and things like that. So I had a lot of fun with this one. So let's just show you the video. So it starts out very slow, and my edits get faster and faster as the video goes until the end. So yeah, let's just watch it.
Praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead.
So there you go. That's the video, all the animations. I'll be going through all these project files, quickly breaking down and slowly going on through a few of them. Just for the edit itself, for the music, as you can see right here, it's very, very slow. And then over here, it gets very, very quick. So I edited to that. But I kept in mind not to make it too fast because of the size of the screen, and the whole room is dark, so I didn't want it to be too jarring and too crazy on the movements. And so let's just go through into the project files, and I'll talk about my methods and my thought process behind some of these. Hopefully they're not all crazy, but just to show you, these are all the project files. Some not used, some used. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to go in and open up the official, the big one. So this is the first big shot that I rendered here for the animation. This actually is the first design I made. I went in and I grabbed a image scan of this David. I believe it's David. Who it is doesn't really matter. More of the idea of that's just a very old bust of an old person, giving it the idea of a saint. Now this is 1,180 frames. Just letting it play through like this. Let me mute my computer here. It has some of the audio behind it. So yeah, this is just running through like that. It's very, very simple. I just took a camera, started here, add a keyframe, and zoomed all the way out. I mean, stopped it right about here. Now, for the music, it starts distorting, and I wanted to be able to show the imagery to work with that distortion. If we go back into Premiere, you can hear it. Right here, the music starts to distort. And it just sort of jars it a little bit. And then it goes in. So I figured to give it a little bit more interest rather than just a back pan, I started to animate him going backwards just to feel sort of helpless and falling into, whatever, like space. It gives you kind of a space vibe. Now, let's go into this material. It is, if you watched here on the Patreon, if you've seen the Lava Shader tutorial, it's literally the Lava Shader tutorial, just changed slightly. So you can see this is the node setup here. I'll just go into Look Dev so you can see what's actually going on. It's a bunch of cracks, and this is the fairly complex node setup. But at the end of the day, what it is, it's 3 Voronoi shaders, just like in the Lava tutorial. So if you want a full breakdown of that, instead of using those 3 Voronois to manipulate 2 different shaders, it's just those 3 Voronois plugged into a bump map, and then I used a noise texture bump map as well, as you can see, to add some more bumping here. So I added that on top, so the Lava Shader doesn't have those. But all these cracks, it's just the Lava Shader, but tightened. So if you want to have a full breakdown of how to make this, go watch that. And then, of course, instead of using a mixed shader, you would just use one principled shader and plug that here into a bump, and also plugging that into a color ramp to the base color. So it's not a crazy node setup, but it was very hefty on my computer, and rendering 1,000 frames took about maybe an hour and a half here in Eevee, which is maybe the longest render I've ever had in Eevee. So that speaks to Eevee's speed. But yeah, as you can see, just I can manipulate the Voronoi here and just sort of play with. Here's the big one I can really start to screw with. But it's very, very cool, very, very powerful shader. I'll write a note to provide this exact shader for you guys to use so that you can, obviously use it. I don't know if I've already provided it in an asset pack I've already released, but if I haven't, I'll provide this for you guys. So now we have the arm with that same cracked texture applied, and we have one light just strobing here on the guy, along with, I believe, we have a big volume object here in the middle, which is creating the reason why I did the volume object, because it creates more bloom. The bloom does something, but I want the volume to also add some more haze to the object. Now, if you're wondering how to do strobing, all I did was I started the light at the strength of 45, keyframed all the way down to 21, and then I did that 45. Okay, then I brought it all the way to 94. Basically, I made random values, and then I went over to the animation tab here, and I pulled up the graph editor, and all I did was I made sure that that light is selected so that when we go into the modifiers here in the graph editor, I added a modifier, and then I added a noise. And what happens with the noise, and rather than it doing a smooth up down on the strength of the light, it just cycles very randomly, and it spikes it, and it takes it and randomizes it, and basically applies noise to that. And so that's just a quick fluff edit here. So we have arm. Here's a random one that I didn't use. This is just sort of an extra. Let me bring this timeline down so we can see. This is a brick texture. It's very simple. We'll go into the nodes very quickly. So what I did was I have 2 brick textures plugged into a overlay of a mix RGB. So I changed the blend mode to overlay. You guys can see as I change it, it randomizes that factor. So, and then I used a color ramp and plugged that into the mix shader, and then also made that transparent. And so you can just play with this as well. And then it's just super, super simple sort of MoGraph thing. This never got used It was an extra clip, but I figured I'd show you guys that one really quick. Discard changes. Now, if you guys have seen the tutorial of mine that's called, if you guys have seen the Meteor tutorial, then you know how to fracture objects. So I took the arm and I applied a cell fracture to it. So now we have this stuff, and then I made them all rigid body. I made all those objects rigid body. It's got a weird, there we go. And because I made them rigid body, I added a turbulence force field to it. So that's taking all these rigid bodies and applying, I believe it's turbulence. I applied 2 fields. So down here, I believe I just duplicated it. So we have a force field down here, which is pushing them up this way. And then I have a force field here, which is pushing it out. So it's making sure that they don't fall. And this one's making sure that they push it out. And then the strength is up at 300 here. And this bottom one, the strength is at 300 as well. So it's really strong. And instead of making it look like a natural explosion, I want it to be kind of mysterious. So it does this. And it goes out. And it's sort of a natural, cool kind of explosion. And I did not apply the cracked texture because that would have just overloaded my computer. And a simple point light setup with a principled volume shader. All this is an Eevee, by the way. Here's just another very simple one. Volume around my object here, having the object simply spinning with a circle, sort of a curved circle, just sort of doing a weird rotation here in the middle, adding some sort of sci-fi looking stuff. Again, with that cracked material applied and just rotating at 360 degrees with 240 frames. Very slow, very flexible for editing. So, made that stuff. Okay, so here's a cool one. I made that same thing, except I added the head with some very cool glowing. So what you're seeing here is the Blender Abstract Animation Loop in Eevee. It's the one with the purple and bluish head. So as you can see, I use a lot of the stuff I teach. I don't teach you guys just stuff that I think is kind of cool. This is stuff I use a lot. So if you want to see how I did that particular blue part, you can see that here in this tutorial, but you can see I made it a little bit more minimal if you've already seen the tutorial. This is very minimal version of it. So it just cycles through. Let's go to the nodes. Again, it is using everything in that cracked material. So that's all the stuff you're seeing here that cracked. And then I put it on a mix shader. And then I just put a simple emission right here for this slot of the mix shader. And then I told it to make this Voronoi texture with this Musgrave, pretty much. When you combine a Voronoi and Musgrave, it makes these really loopy, curvy lines. And then I animated it with the color ramp. And I created this animation. So it goes through, just adds some more sci-fi stuff to that cracked texture. Just makes it a little more interesting. All right, here's a very popular MoGraph one again. I'm considering doing a tutorial for this. Seems a little bit too simple. I might not. But this one's only 80 frames. And so I made it turn on, basically. So let's just show you the model I created for this. So let's go right here. Turn on what's selected. If I hit tab. So what I did here, it's a lot of instancing. So let's just remove all these instances to the last section. Okay, so this is basically the only amount of real geometry I have in the scene. So it's one object that I added an array modifier to, and then I applied it. So you can see I insetted the face here in the middle, which applies the, hold on. So I insetted the face, which allows me to make this light here on the inside. So I applied an emission to a metallic. And then what I did was I just hit box select, hit M, and then I added it to a new collection, which I called EW. EW. I just put random titles for my stuff. And then all I did was I hit Shift A, collection instance, clicked EW, and then after that, I turn on my arrows here. I just put it out. If you've seen my loop tutorials, I show you how to correctly position things so that it will loop seamlessly. I don't know if I looped this one though. Everything was pretty much, all the edits were about 5 seconds long, so I'm not wasting any time. And then I took my camera in and I put it through, and I made it spin, just like that. And then for the lighting, as I said, as I showed here, and we'll go to the shading tab here. Click on this first one. There we go. So I started at 0, and I waited a couple seconds. So let me pull up my timeline. Come on. All right, so started here and went all the way up to frame 30, which is when the light turns up to this the brightest color, the brightest strength, which is 10. So we'll just turn on here. Starts at 0 and blinks on. The way you do that, which is not how I made my intro on the on my tutorial channel, that's from After Effects, but it's basically the same exact concept. You just sort of blinks on. So all I did, let's go to animation here, and just like I did in the other strobe light on the arm, I added a noise, but instead of the noise continuing throughout, right here you can say restrict frame range. So let's say if I turn off, so if I were to not have that, the noise would be going all up in here and all up in here, and it would just continue to be noisy. So I told it to only be noisy up to frame 30 rather than the entire scale of the whole thing. Even if you tell it to stop here, so start at 0, stop at 10, it'll continue the noise will continue to affect it, and it'll still be blinking. So you have to tell it at frame 30, stop applying the noise modifier and just leave it as normal. And what that allows it to do is blink on, just like that. And if you saw all those pictures blinking in the animation, that exact same procedure. So I'm not going to go through that one. I just did that, but I did that to a bunch of photos. All right, this one's called Neon Lines. This is an old concept I've done many times, and it's very standard to another MoGraph. When I say MoGraph, I mean motion graphics, for those who don't understand what I'm saying. So all I did was I added a tube. So let me put my previews back on, hide this. So you can see it's just a tube that I applied a wireframe modifier to it, and then I wanted them to break up, and I didn't want to do that procedurally. I just wanted to do it quick and dirty. So I added the same tube, but I added a displace modifier to it, and then took my camera through. So now it cuts it up as lines. Took my camera through and did it all the way through like this. And I believe, okay, it does loop. I remember seeing it at the conference and couldn't remember if it looped or not because they used it for something else. And super grateful that I actually looped it. So sometimes I don't know what I do or remember. So I did that, and then I did another thing. So let's open another one, discard changes, Neon Lines, copy. And instead, I did the exact same thing, but instead, I looped the noise, so you can see it doing this. So like I've always done to loop noise, I add a circle right here, and then I added an empty going around it like that, 360 degrees, and then I told the displacement to use the empty as the displace object. So that loops as well. I don't know if I looped this one either. Oh, I did. Okay, so it loops as well. So it's the same concept, except I looped the displacement to give it a lot more interesting, because as the song goes on, it gets faster and more energetic. So I used this later on in the video, but pretty much same concept. If you've seen the Meteor tutorial I just recently posted, this project is how I figured that out. A lot of my tutorials come from just ideas I've had that I figured out through trying to solve problems in my projects. So just trying to figure this out, and I figured out how to do it. It's like, okay, might as well do a tutorial on it. So if you want to know how I did this specifically, there's a tutorial on this exact thing, so I don't want to waste time on it, but I needed a Meteor thing. But I did take this exact same thing, made a copy of it, but this time I gave them some glows, so I'll show you the node setup for that. It's very simple. And then I made the camera also rotate. So I made these meteors sort of lava looking. So as you can see, let me go through here until I get a good view on one. So this was one of my favorite ones right there, just the way the camera got it. So we'll go to rendered view. Really simple. Mix shader here. So I have a principled, which is the rocky shader. We'll just zoom in on this guy here so we can see what's happening. So we have the rocky shader with a noise texture applied to the bump, so you can see that happening. And then I have the mix shader, applied an emission shader to it, and then I just used another noise texture to manipulate that to a color ramp. So then you can apply how big you want that to be. So now we have all of that. And then I just took my camera through the meteor field. As you can see, just made a basic field here. And then have, of course, a light that is parented to the camera. And then I just took it through some volume and did the same exact thing as the other animation, just made a different shade. Okay, so this is the opening shot. There is not a duplicate. I just spun the camera through it. So as you can see, I spun the camera through this scene. Should have duplicated the file, but I was having a lot of problems, and we were running through this very last minute, so I didn't have time to actually make a new one. I was just sort of rushing through, so I didn't think about it. But I'll show you. Now this is actually really, really fun of what I actually did in this project. So let me just open up a new project file. Make a new file. Let me show you how I actually made the displacement look here in the bottom so smooth, because it's kind of like a vertex group situation. I'm going to discard the changes and add a plane. So I'm going to bring this guy up, apply scale, subdivide it by 100. All right, let me see if I can remember how I did this. So I'm going to add a modifier, and it's going to be a displace, new. I'm going to go and just use clouds because I believe that's what I used in the first place. And we'll do this right here. I'm going to bring the scale down to 0.3. Actually, 0.5. Cool. So now we have this. I want to use weight paint to basically, I wanted the camera to go through the middle, and I wanted the rocks to be higher than the camera, but I can't do that because the camera would just be flying through it like that, and it would be hitting it. So I wanted here in the middle to be lower than everything. So what I did was I went over here to weight paint, and I took the middle here, and I just painted right here, just like that. And then I took the vertex group and I applied that vertex group. So now it's the opposite here. So what I need to do, I'm just going to hit Control Z and start painting just right here to make a vertex group. Apply the group. And so now we're painting. So now we're going to be painting the hills. So I'm just going to bring my brush radius pretty big to give you guys an example of how this works. So now we're just painting the hills. Basically, I don't know why I'm calling them hills, but now it's smooth. And I can just get a little bit closer here. And now it's smaller. And then if I want to, I can change it. So say I want to add a, so I'm going to go subtract and then make them smaller. Just like that. And it smoothly ramps down the displacement. And so now I can go into the strength and really make it extreme. And now I have here right in the middle, just going straight through in that way. And it's smooth rather than making a vertex group and it's very jaded and jutted. We have a more smooth vertex group to go through the hills and things like that. So that's very, very useful, I think. Was able to figure out this problem here. So doing work, things like that, you just naturally have to come up with problems and you have a lot of fun and a little bit of frustration trying to figure out these fixes. So let's go to the next project file here. Now this one's my favorite. I called it Spinnin' Lights. So if we just want to check out how it looks. So I ended up actually changing a lot, but you saw one video, one of the clips here. I'll just pull it up. If we can see it. Here we go. So let's just press play. And you can see the lights are spinning around. And so just basic animation here, just moving the head. But I'll show you how I did those lights. We'll get into that right now. So we'll just, I have a circle here. And he's going around super fast. Not really super fast, but he's going around pretty fast. And so if we want to see the preview here, he's going around like this. And what I did was, so all I did to make that actually spin around was I made one. So I'm going to go ahead and actually make him a lot faster. So we have this circle, and now we have a light. And so I went into the constraints here, and I added a follow path constraint, and I selected this circle. And then I told the offset. So we're going to just clear the keyframes and make a new one. So we're going to start at 0, insert keyframe, go to the very end, and then I'm going to give it an offset of, let's say, 300. So it goes around the circle 3 times. So if we press enter, he's going around really fast. And so what I did was, as you can see, the light starts on this side. All I did was I duplicated it, just like this, and then brought it down. And then I took the light down here. Where's he at? I picked him, and I told it to select the other circle and go back and sit on that line. So he's not sitting on it just yet. And then I'm going to delete those keyframes. And then I'm going to start him here in the back. So it's 48. So I'm going to give it 48. And so now I'm going to start a keyframe. Insert keyframe. Go to the end. Skip a frame. I'm going to give it 348. 348. Insert keyframe. Oops. All right. Let's see. Insert keyframe. Cool. So now that they're on opposite sides, now we can watch it animate just like that. And then I just took this guy and I kind of animated him going up like that. Very simple keyframing. But yeah, now we have this really cool light setup, and you can use that for all kinds of stuff, and you can have fun. Just say I wanted to make it look a little more crazy. Make one blue. Up the strength by a lot. And make this one red. Or even purple. And then up that strength by quite a number. And so now you can see how they're both manipulating each other, just going around and having a lot of fun with lighting. And there you go. That is the project of the client project for the Saints and Comrades conference. So I hope you guys like this. I hope you learned some stuff. I'm going to go ahead and provide those nodes that I had told you guys. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. If you have any questions, put them in the comments here on the Patreon of the post. And yeah, thanks for watching.